I remember the night it finally caught up to me. It was almost 11 p.m., and the apartment felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I was sitting at my small kitchen table, the one I bought secondhand from a neighbor when I first moved into this city. And my wallet lay right beside my elbow, thin, warm, almost embarrassed to be opened again. I had just paid my electric bill. The number glowed on the screen a little longer than it should have, like it wanted me to memorize it. My chest tightened in that familiar way, a quiet pinch right under the ribs. It's strange how a number on a screen can change the temperature of a room. I took a breath, the kind you take when you're trying not to fall apart, and I touched the wallet gently with the back of my finger. The leather felt cool, almost tired. Maybe that was just me projecting. Maybe it was both of us. Tolstoy once implied something that stayed with me over the years. A line that sounded simple but felt heavier each time I thought about it. People don't grow hard because they're unkind. They grow hard because they're afraid. And sitting there, in the dim kitchen light, I finally admitted to myself that fear had been living in me for a long time. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. A quiet roommate I never invited but somehow fed every day. Fear of not having enough. Fear of falling behind. Fear of waking up one day and realizing life had quietly grown too expensive for someone like me. The wallet rested there like a question I didn't want to answer. Are you living? Or just defending yourself? Outside the window, the city hummed its late-night soundtrack, cars rolling over wet streets. Someone's laughter echoing across the courtyard, the soft buzz of a neon sign that never turns off. I could smell the last bit of instant coffee left in my chipped mug beside the sink. I should have washed it, but exhaustion makes small chores feel like climbing stairs with weights on your ankles. I check my phone again. I always check it, even when I don't need anything. Maybe it's a way of pretending control, a fake door to escape through. Somewhere in the feed, a TikTok from earlier replayed in my mind. Someone talking about money anxiety. Not from overspending, but from overworrying. From carrying the weight of survival like a stone in your pocket. And when I heard it, even hours later, I felt something shift. That's me. Exactly me. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes for a moment. The air smelled faintly of last night's takeout. My shoulders ached from the day, from the tasks, the meetings, the deadlines that always seem to multiply when you're already tired. I thought about the little things I ignore to survive. The groceries I put back on the shelf last week. The coat I wanted but told myself I didn't really need. The dinners with friends I keep postponing because work is crazy right now. The way I smile even when my stomach is in knots because I don't want people to worry. There's a special kind of loneliness in pretending everything is fine. It's quiet, it's polite, and it eats at you slowly, the way water wears down stone. The wallet lay there the whole time, thin but patient, like it was waiting for me to finally see it for what it was. Not a failure, not an insult, but a mirror, a reflection of how long I'd been running on fear, how carefully I'd taught myself to be small, cautious, guarded. I touched it again, lightly. The edges were frayed. The stitching was loosening in one corner. It almost looked like a person who had worked too many shifts, taken too many deep breaths, held too many unspoken worries. Maybe that's why it felt emotional. Maybe I was seeing myself in it. A question rose, quiet but persistent. When did I start living like the next bill could break me? I didn't have the answer, but I felt it somewhere deep in my chest, in that small space where old memories and new fears sit together like mismatched roommates. I got up and poured myself a glass of water. The faucet squeaked, the pipes rattled, the glass was colder than I expected. I took a slow sip, the way someone might sip something sacred, and in that moment, with the soft hum of the refrigerator behind me and the wallet still on the table, I realized something I didn't want to say out loud. I wasn't cold. I wasn't harsh. I wasn't selfish. I was exhausted from holding everything alone. I sat back down, the chair creaking under me, and stared at the wallet again. It was just an object, just leather and thread. But that night, it became the beginning of a question I hadn't had the courage to ask. What kind of life am I building? When fear is the one doing the building. I didn't know the answer yet, but I felt the question settle inside me, quiet and heavy. And it opened the door to everything that came next. The morning after that quiet reckoning, I woke before my alarm. It wasn't rest, it was worry waking me up early again. The room was still dim, the kind of blue-gray light that makes everything look softer but somehow heavier at the same time. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it without thinking. Habit, fear, duty. I'm not sure. It was an email from my boss. Subject, OT needed this week. I sat there for a moment, the blanket pooled around my waist trying to swallow the tightness in my throat. I knew what it meant. Longer hours, more pressure, more pretending I was fine. I went into the kitchen and saw my wallet right where I'd left it the night before. Thin, quiet, almost like it was watching me. I looked at it, then at my reflection in the microwave door. Tired eyes, messy hair, the shape of someone who's been running a marathon that has no finish line. And I whispered to myself, barely audible, if I don't push harder, my future won't be safe. But another voice rose behind it, clearer, older, maybe wiser. If I keep living like this, I'll lose myself. That line didn't sound dramatic. It sounded true, too true. I made coffee, the cheap kind that always tastes a little burnt. Steam curled up from the cup and warmed my face, but it didn't settle the shaking inside me. I kept thinking about how money pressure doesn't just follow you. It reshapes you. It narrows your world. It makes you discount your own softness like it's a luxury you can't afford. The days that followed moved like heavy water, thick, slow, hard to push through. At work, the deadlines felt closer. The lights felt brighter. The endless pings from emails and chat messages made my nerves hum like exposed wires. I'd stare at spreadsheets until the numbers blurred in the fog. I'd nod at requests I didn't have energy for. And when coworkers asked, "You doing okay?" I'd always respond with the same lie wrapped in a polite smile. "I'm fine, just tired." But tired was only the surface. Beneath it was something sharper. I started noticing how the pressure was hardening me, just like Tolstoy had warned. Little moments revealed it. Snapping at a coworker who interrupted me. Ignoring a call from my mom because I felt too ashamed to talk about money. Feeling jealousy when I saw friends post vacation photos. Looking away when a homeless man asked for change outside the train station. Not because I didn't care, but because caring hurt. The thinning wallet came with me everywhere. Not physically, but in feeling. Every decision carried its weight. Every small joy came with a mental price tag. Every act of kindness felt like giving away something I didn't have enough of. And I knew I wasn't the only one feeling this way. I saw it in the cashier at the grocery store. The way her smile faded the moment no customers were watching. I saw it in my neighbor, a single dad who worked late shifts and once said, "I sleep in 2-hour pieces now." I saw it in a friend who admitted over text, "I haven't bought fresh fruit in weeks." Money's tight. I even saw it in older coworkers, people who had survived recessions, layoffs, and entire careers built on making ends meet. Different ages, different jobs, different stories, same heaviness. Money has a way of equalizing fear. I remembered scrolling Reddit late one night when someone wrote a sentence that hit harder than any motivational speech I'd heard. Money stress doesn't just drain your wallet, it drains your softness. And as I read it, something inside me wilted. Because softness was the part of myself I liked. the part that made me human. But survival mode doesn't leave much room for softness. That week, the hidden costs of not changing became painfully clear. I skipped meals. I worked through lunch breaks. I ignored friends. I stayed up late calculating numbers that still didn't add up. And somewhere along the way, I realized I was losing more than energy. I was losing joy, curiosity, kindness, hope. If I didn't change, I knew exactly what would happen. I'd become someone I didn't want to be. Someone who snapped first, cared later, and lived life with clenched fists instead of open hands. And I hated that. I hated the slow erosion of who I used to be. I hated the small bitterness forming in the back of my throat. I hated checking my phone at night just to silence the panic. But the moment everything cracked open wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even something anyone else would notice. I was standing at the vending machine at work, counting coins to buy a $1.50 snack. And I felt my throat tighten, not from shame, but from a sudden realization that broke through all the noise. If I don't change now, I will lose myself. Not in a year, not someday, now. The wallet in my pocket felt impossibly thin. But for the first time, it wasn't the wallet that scared me. It was the person I was becoming because of it. And that fear, the deeper fear, is what finally pushed me toward the turning point I never saw coming.
The night everything shifted didn't look special from the outside. No big signs, no dramatic news, just me, sitting alone at my kitchen table again. The same cheap overhead light humming above me. The same wallet resting by my hand like a tired companion. But something in me felt different that night. Maybe softer, maybe braver, maybe just exhausted enough to finally be honest. I opened the wallet, half expecting it to feel heavier than it really was, half hoping it might magically reveal something new. It didn't. It was the same, thin, stretched, worn down in the corners, the kind of wallet that carried stories more than cash. But for the first time, instead of blaming myself for what wasn't inside it, I just breathed. I looked at the fading receipts tucked in the pockets, grocery runs, a bus ticket, a cheap coffee from the corner bodega. Each one felt like a small chapter of a life I'd been surviving in, not really living. I whispered into the quiet room, how long do I want to live like this? Not in anger, not in fear, just truth. And somehow, that honest question softened the whole night. I remembered something Tolstoy once suggested in his own way, a line I'd underlined in a paperback years ago. We can't always change the big life, but we can change a small act. Small act, not big, not perfect, not instant, just small. It made me think about how I'd been approaching everything like it needed a massive transformation. Like financial peace had to look like a whole new job, a whole new world, a whole new identity. But maybe what I needed wasn't a revolution. Maybe it was a shift, a breath, a step. I put the wallet down and pulled out a notebook I hadn't touched in months. The cover was bent from being shoved in bags for years. I wrote down 3 simple lines. 1. Don't punish yourself for being scared. 2. Add along 1 kind step tomorrow. 3. Let softness stay. And those 3 lines felt like the beginning of something quietly hopeful. The next day at work, instead of saying yes automatically, I paused before answering emails. I took a slow breath before agreeing to another late-night task. I even told my boss in the calmest voice I've ever used with him, I can take on the project, but I'll need an extra day. He didn't get mad. He didn't fire me, he just nodded. And I realized how many monsters I had built inside my own mind. That evening, walking home, the city felt different. Or maybe I was different. The streetlights seemed warmer. The sounds of traffic felt less sharp. I noticed a father holding his daughter's hand at the crosswalk, her tiny backpack bouncing as she walked. I noticed a woman in scrubs waiting for the bus, leaning heavily on one foot after what must have been a long shift. I noticed a man in a well-tailored suit standing alone under a tree, staring at his phone with the same tired look I recognized in myself. Different lives, different incomes, different backgrounds, same confusion, same pressure, same silent prayers that tomorrow won't drown them. It made me realize money stress didn't isolate me. It connected me, quietly, invisibly, humanly. Later that week, I took one small step I'd been avoiding. I made a simple boundary for myself. I wouldn't work past 7 p.m. unless it was an emergency. Just that. Not a rebellion, not a career change. Just an act of kindness toward the version of me that desperately needed rest. I also started listing things I could do that weren't grand gestures but still mattered. Selling a few unused items, doing a tiny side gig on weekends, choosing simpler meals, saying no without guilt, sleeping earlier so I could think clearer. None of these solved everything, but all of them made life feel less impossible. And that's when the symbol, the thinning wallet, began changing meaning. Before, it represented scarcity. Then, it represented fear. Now, it felt like a reminder to be gentle.
A reminder that life wasn't measured in the thickness of leather, but in the tenderness I carried toward myself. Another thinker came to mind, not Tolstoy this time, but Carl Rogers, who once wrote, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." And I felt it, not just as a quote, but as a truth settling into my bones. I wasn't fixing my whole life. I wasn't escaping fear forever. I wasn't magically rich or suddenly wise, but I was accepting myself. And that acceptance opened a door I didn't know I was allowed to walk through. The door to slow, steady change. The door to breathing again. The door to a life that didn't demand cruelty from me just to survive. I picked up the wallet one more time that night. It was still thin, but I didn't feel afraid anymore. Because for the first time, I knew I could change, quietly, gently, and on my own terms. And that was enough to begin. Here's what I remember most from those days. Something small, something ordinary, something I didn't think mattered at the time. I remember a morning when the light came through the blinds in thin, quiet lines. The kind of light that doesn't try to impress you, just shows up. I was holding my wallet again, the thinning one that had followed me through every season of pressure. And instead of the usual tightening in my chest, I felt something else, something closer to understanding. Not peace, not yet, but something like a beginning. I sat there with a bowl of oatmeal cooling on the table, listening to the soft hum of the building's heater as it kicked on. The city outside wasn't fully awake yet. I could hear one early bus screeching to a stop, a dog barking in the next apartment, footsteps in the hallway. Life, happening, life, continuing, life, asking nothing more of me than to take one breath and then another. In that stillness, I realized how long I'd been trying to outrun myself. How often I'd tried to prove my worth through exhaustion, as if tiredness was a kind of currency, as if being worn out somehow meant I was doing life right. But that morning, I felt softer, not fragile, just gentle, like life didn't have to be a fight every single hour, like maybe I didn't have to hold my breath through every bill, every deadline, every fear about the future. I kept thinking about a line I'd once read from Thoreau, tucked in the margins of a book I borrowed from a library years ago.
We are rich in proportion to the number of things we can afford to let alone. I didn't fully understand it then, but I understood it now. Letting things alone didn't just mean living simply. It meant releasing the expectations that were crushing me. Letting go of the idea that I needed to earn love, or rest, or dignity. Letting go of the belief that softness was a weakness. I put the wallet down on the table and let it sit there like a quiet ending to a long chapter. The leather still felt thin, still worn, still imperfect. But instead of seeing lack, I saw a story, a history. All the moments I had survived, all the times I had kept going, even when I didn't know how. And I realized that healing wasn't a big event. It was this: sitting alone in a sunlit kitchen, hearing your own breath and not flinching. I thought about the people I'd seen in the past weeks. The grocery store cashier with the tired smile. The single dad in my building who was always carrying laundry baskets. The woman in scrubs waiting for the bus. The man in the suit leaning against a tree, staring at his phone like it held all his fears. Different worlds, different incomes, different battles. But all of us were trying. All of us were holding fear one moment at a time. All of us were learning how to soften without falling apart. Here's what I know now. Small acts change people. Small boundaries save lives. Small kindnesses rebuild hearts. You don't become whole in a single moment.
You become whole in the collection of small moments where you choose not to give up on yourself. So here's what I started doing. Simple things. Things that didn't look impressive on the outside but felt like medicine on the inside. I made a rule to sit down when I ate, even if it was just toast. I said no to one extra task a week. I wrote down every expense without blaming myself. I stopped apologizing for resting. I let myself breathe, really breathe, before answering emails. And slowly, the world softened around me because I softened within it. The wallet didn't thicken overnight, but something inside me did. A steadiness, a calm, a feeling that I wasn't drowning anymore, just waiting. One night, I placed the wallet on the table again and just looked at it. There was no shame this time, no fear, just a quiet sense of companionship. This little object that had held so much of my story. The weight of it hadn't changed, but the weight of my heart had. So if you're sitting where I once sat, tired, scared, feeling like one wrong bill could break you, try this tonight. Sit with yourself, just for a minute. Look at one small thing you carry every day. Your keys, your shoes, your phone, your wallet. Let it speak. Let yourself answer. Let the softness return, even if only for a breath. Sometimes healing begins in the smallest of silences. Sometimes the quietest moment is the moment everything turns. The heater hummed again. The morning light stretched a little farther across the table. The wallet sat in the same spot as always, but I wasn't the same person looking at it anymore. And that small shift was enough to change the direction of my whole life.